Hey, what is up, everybody? Michael Crump back here again, talking about the latest and the greatest in PlayStation homebrew news and much, much more. So, as you can see, OKAGE Shadow King is showing as purchased, and I want to tell you why I did that and why you might want to go ahead and purchase this game as well, starting right now. So, just to kick things off here, back in September the 14th, 2022, we saw this release by Cturt called mast1c0re. Now, it's called hacking the PS4 and the PS5 through the PS2 Emulator. In this article, he describes how he successfully escaped the PS2 Emulator that was developed for the PlayStation 4. Now, if we scroll down into this article, we can see why he settled on the PS2 Emulator. So obviously the very first reason was escaping it would grant the ability to run pirated PS2 games on the PS4 and the PS5 and potentially also PSN cloud gaming service. The next reason is that the PS2 emulator is some of the last remaining JIT or just-in-time privileged code that's running on the PS5. So Sony has aggressively been removing JIT privileged attack surface from the PS5 with things such as the web browser and the Blu-ray player. But since the PS2 emulator is really a PS4 title that runs due to backwards compatibility, they were unable to make changes to the software, and so JIT privilege had to be spared. And now another thing that I'll just quickly say here is that PS2 games or PS2 game ISOs really isn't something that Sony is really trying to protect or to prevent people from pirating today. Obviously, you can run all of these PS2 ISO images, obviously on PS2, PS3, and then PS4 through fake packages. And for the most part, I don't believe that PS2 is something that Sony is that concerned with. The third reason here was under PlayStation's security model, it's essentially unpatchable. So here is the key part here. Once you have access to an exploitable game, digital or physical, it would be extremely difficult for PlayStation to remove your access to it, which is why I believe right now everyone should download OKAGE Shadow King on their PlayStation 4 or their PlayStation 5. I don't believe that this game is going to disappear from the PlayStation Store, but it would be advised to go ahead and have that downloaded on your device because then it can't be removed by Sony. And so the rest of this article here really just shows exactly what the emulator is, the emulator bug that's out there, how that he was able to exploit it. And then finally, there was this video right here, which shows what the escape process looks like. So I think it would make sense right now to go ahead and to watch this video again before moving forward. Now, basically, the game is just being loaded up. There we can see we got the PlayStation 2 logo here. Okay, and so at this point, it says waiting to receive a disk image file. Is that he is running on Windows, and you can see that he's running NC, which is netcat-w3, and then an IP address, and then a port number, and then he is redirecting another game, which is Clona 2, with a .iso. So he already has this PlayStation 2 game as an ISO image on his computer. And there we can see remounting and now booting. And so now here is the other game that is currently being loaded up. And so there you go. And that is pretty much it for the video. He was using Netcat, which is something we won't see in the next video that I'm about to show. So now that we are completely up to date, I want to discuss what was released on 1/24/2023. And that comes by another security researcher, which is called McCaulay. And what he says right here is the PS5 latest firmware proof of concept. Now, he mentions that the technical details was definitely work that was based off of Cturt, as well as the blog post that we've been discussing right here. So let's take a look at this video. Okay, to kick things off, what he does is he goes into his system software updates. It was on the latest version of the software, and that is currently at 6.50, which we can just see right here. He will go back and he will go into settings and then save data and game app settings. He goes down to save data, which is for the PlayStation 4, and he goes to the USB drive. And as you can see right here, this is save game data that is for OKAGE Shadow King that he's going to copy to his console storage. So basically what is happening here is that there's a number of vulnerabilities typically in these older PlayStation 2 games, such as buffer overflow. A lot of this is how we were able to do things like soft mod the Xbox with the Splinter Cell game. So we can see it selected and then it is copied over to the console. Now, once it's copied over to the console, as we can see right up here, there is OKAGE Shadow King. He will go in and he will play the game. You'll see that once he gets to a load screen, that is where he's able to take advantage of that save game file. So the start button here, he is restoring a game. And now at this point, the exploit has been injected. It does say downloading game. Now again, we don't see any of the netcat commands that we saw in Cturt's video that I believe that he was able to send via maybe that netcat command. I still don't know. And here we are loading a game, Midnight Club. Now in this game, he does play the game just for a moment, and skipping into the video, you will see that he's able to have saved data for that game. But what you will see now is that he brings back up the switcher application and he's able to show that OKAGE Shadow King is still the active game that's currently being played. And so if he goes down to the close game, well, that's obviously going to close the OKAGE Shadow King as well as the connection that he just had that sent the PS2 ISO image to his PlayStation 5 console. And so just a quick recap of the timeline so far. So Master Core was discovered and reported back on September 2021. Cturt gets permission to publish the vulnerability on September the 14th, 2022. Cturt also releases the video showing this working on a PlayStation 4. Now, with the PlayStation 4 that Cturt showed, he did not show his version number, but that was on September the 14th. And then McCaulay released a video showing this on PS5 6.50 on January the 24th, 2023. And now we know that this was officially blessed by Cturt, because Cturt said over here on Twitter, very cool to see a public re-implementation of the first part of my Master Core exploit chain, especially when tested on the latest PS5 firmware. So this is very good news to know that Cturt has seen this and I think is pretty happy with how this implementation was developed. And we can also see over here that we do know that for the PlayStation 4, this was also tested on version 5.05. However, it should work on the latest firmware version. So PS4 5.05 as well as PS5 6.50, this is working perfectly on. I did come down here and say, hey, I can test this on 6.72, 9.00, or 10.01, but I am still waiting on a response. So McCaulay, if you want to chat with me, I would be very open to having a conversation and getting to tell really your story And one more quick thing before we wrap up today. As you can see in part one conclusion of Cturt's blog post, he did say that PS2 piracy is basically fun, especially being able to disclose it despite there being no patch. But my main goal was getting native homebrew applications running. So keep in mind here that the main goal was not getting PS2 games to run on new hardware like the PS4 or the PS5, but to really get native homebrew applications running. Now, we will see that when the second part comes out, we may get something like that, but right now we absolutely do not. And so, my final thoughts would be to go ahead and get OKAGE Shadow King from the PlayStation Store. It is at a discount right now. It is $6 US. It was $10 before, but it's again on a discount right now. At least if you want to be able to play with something like this when it comes out. Now, it's obviously not just good enough to go and purchase it, but you need to go ahead and download it and put that on your PlayStation 4 or your PlayStation 5. Because again, as said right here, once you have access to an exploitable game, digital or physical, it would be extremely difficult for PlayStation to remove your access to it. Okay, so that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Michael, out.